welcome to Let's Play Gran Turismo 3 episode 76, and where officially it is now time for us to get on with our next championship event in this game, which is the Professional All Japan GT Championship. And, well, because most of these cars I've driven up to this point, I would say that officially, since I've driven pretty much most of the JGTC cars I can drive that I have in my garage, I'm going to purchase something else. And by that, I'm going to head up to the car dealer and head over to Toyota, and this is what my strategy is going to be. Because, well, I'm going to use the mascot, or at least what I think is the mascot of this game. It is a Toyota Supra, and obviously, it's not just any Supra, but it's the ToyotaCastrolTom'sSupra. So, available in one colour obviously, because, well, this is the livery. These are the specs. I'm also pretty certain that I am going to use this thing. But yeah, we're using the Toyota Supra, since I've already used the other Supra I have in my garage, and I'm going to do some tuning now. So, I would imagine this thing is coincidentally going to be a turbo, because, well, cannot get any engine upgrades obviously, but officially, I am going to get myself a Stage 1 turbo because, well, it's cheap, and I'm also going to do the same for the Stage 2 turbo because I would imagine, since this is the professional league, the AI will inevitably have tuning on their race cars, and also going to do the super slicks as well because that's all I really need. And also, just because I don't want to do too much tuning to this thing, I'm just going to do an oil change, just so that I've got some additional horsepower for the first two races. Anyways, let's get on with the Professional All Japan GT Championship, aka JGTC. So, a 10 race championship, 30 grand if we can win each of these races, and circuits we are going to include Grand Valley, Apricot Hill, Test Course, Route 11, Laguna Seca, Trial Mountain, Rome Reverse, Grand Valley Reverse, Tokyo, and Monaco for the finale, which I'm pretty sure is going to be an easy win. And it is now time for us to get through what will probably be one of the gruelest, hardest, and longest championships in this game. And officially, the car I just bought is the car I'm using for this championship. And officially, the field is pretty split up for this championship, because we have two Toyotas, two Nissan Skylines, and two Honda NSXs for this championship. So 473 horsepower, including the oil change I did to this thing, and just gonna make sure, yep, I do have the super slicks on. Don't think I need anything else on, so I'm gonna risk it without the turbo, and hopefully, by default of pit stops, I will hopefully manage to win this race. So, let's go to the start of the Professional All Japan GT Championship, which will also be a 3-part championship like we did with the GT All-Stars previously. Alright, here we go. The start of what I think is probably going to be less than 5 hours of driving. and I probably will have a look to see what my overall mileage is by the end of the championship, to see what exactly the kilometers are ranged by in miles, because, well, that is one thing I will probably want to do, just because, you know, for imperial purposes, at least in terms of the units. And already the Arta NSX is trying to overtake the other Supra, and I'm already going for a move and already making contact with the back of my fellow Supra. The Raybrig NSX does now take the lead in here in Grand Valley. These AI, as I more or less anticipated, clearly have more superior cars than I do in terms of their tuning. I know very well that some of you will be saying I should have put on the turbo, but obviously I prefer to do things separately, and if there is a possibility of me winning a race without needing to do the access tuning, then obviously I will of course be willing to give it a try and hopefully succeed. Oh fuck. As of which I did not succeed in getting through the final corner, unfortunately. And currently running in fourth, running ahead of the first of the two NSXs in this championship. And he's trying to go for a manoeuvre on me. I tried to unsuccessfully close the door on him. He immediately slots past me as I anticipated he would. But again, it doesn't matter too much because pit stops are pretty much guaranteed to happen in this championship, and that is exactly how I'm hopeful in saying that I will manage to win, hopefully 5 out of 10 races, possibly even 6 if I get lucky, or maybe even 7 if I go for the minimum downforce, set up a test course and put on the stage 2 turbo, which is probably going to be something I will do, but you know, I'm not falling too far back in this race at the moment, and already the second of the two NSXs in this race is clearly getting aggressive, as of which at the moment I am trying to fight hard for 4th position, and it was certainly a good thing that I managed to put on the super slicks heading into this championship, because, well, most of these races are 15 laps, but I think there's about 3 races in this championship which are officially 20 laps long, and obviously that is one of the main reasons on why exactly I bolted on the super slicks, and the NSX definitely gave me a nudge there. It definitely looks like he gave me a bump. Unfortunately it was not a bump in the run. Anyways, 2 laps are now complete here at Grand Valley, and already the NSX is beginning to extend his lead at the present time, but hopefully by the time pit stops happen I will eventually manage to take the lead, because I'm pretty sure that since these AI are not racing on the most durable tyres like I am pretty certain, to say the least, in sympathising that most of them will probably pit before the end of this race, and already I'm starting to close up to the Raybrig NSX, so that must prove, of course, that his tyres are starting to wear off after only 2 laps into this race. I am slowly closing in because the gap is now down to 4 seconds, and I would imagine this race probably will be one of those where I will be quicker than the AI, and I did of course take a big chance in not bolting on the turbo before this race begun. I took that risk, and I'm hopeful in saying this is a risk that will manage to pay off. Even though the NSX is clearly proving to be faster than me at the moment down the front stretch, and as of which the other NSX is trying to look for a manoeuvre for second. I'm holding on to the second position at the present time, and it does look as though the NSX is proving to be more superior in the first and final sectors, but fortunately through sector 2 I am at least able to prove, of course, that I can close up. So I would think it's probably the corners where I'm managing to gain most of the on-track intervals, and I would think it's not going to be too long before the NSX considers making a pit stop, as of which the margins at the moment have pretty much stabilised between myself and the NSX at the present time, so I would imagine there is no reason to say why exactly I cannot win this race, because already after only almost 4 laps into this race I have manoeuvred my way up to second position, and hopefully by the time the NSX does make his pit stop, that will hopefully be when I manage to make a bid for the lead. So 4 laps are now complete, and I'm starting to steadily close in on the Honda Raybrig NSX through the corners, as of which the corners are proving, of course, to be my strong suit. Gap is now down to 4.2 seconds, as of which I'm going to assume I got a stronger exit off the hairpin than the Honda did. And off the second hairpin, I'm really starting to close that interval down to the NSX after 4 laps, and cutting the corner just a little bit there, but fortunately not gaining too much on track time as a result of that, as of which there are no obvious shortcuts around Gran Valley, fortunately. As we now head through onto the bridge once again. And the gap is now 3.2 seconds, so I'm definitely managing to close up in the middle sectors. Both sectors 2 and 3 are proving, of course, to be my strong suit up to this point in the race. And already I'm steadily closing in on the NSX, and I fucked up the final corner. Although that doesn't matter too much because I still set a new personal best regardless of that mistake I made. And I am now starting to separate myself from the rest of the field, as of which it looks as though the field at the moment has pretty much spread out after 5 laps, as of which the Arta NSX is fighting hard with the Supra for 3rd position. I am currently running in 2nd. I'm going to assume it's the Peninsula Skyline that's running ahead of the Loctite Skyline, and I'm pretty certain up to this point that I will manage to close in on the leader by the time pit stops happen, because the gap is now just over 3 seconds. We are on the middle of lap 6 and heading now into the final sector, so the gap is now 3.1 seconds. I am steadily closing down that interval. As we now head through the final chicane once again and up to the final corner before the front stretch, managing to do the corner properly this time instead of overshooting it. And that is officially a new best lap time by 0.6 of a second as a result of that, and doesn't look as though the Honda is going to hold on to the lead for much longer. I have steadily closed down that interval pretty much lap after lap. It's taken me 6 laps to catch up to the leader, and I would imagine it is only a matter of time before I do manage to hopefully take the lead and run a little bit wide there through the hairpin, but I'm pretty certain by the time I've got through these snaking corners, I will hopefully manage to make a bid for the lead. So, lap 7, as we now head through the first tunnel once again. The gap is now under half a second. I could very well be tenacious enough to make a move before we head onto the front stretch. I am within the draft of the NSX. And he runs wide. I slot myself in. I am now up into the lead for the first time. Even if it's only temporary, it has taken me nearly 7 laps to officially lead my first lap in this race. As a result of the NSX probably being on worn tyres, and got a little bit of oversteer there through the corner, and trying to defend hard from the NSX. We were literally side by side as we went across the line. I had to throw the block in order to defend my position to lead that lap, and ironically enough I did by 0.02 of a second, and as a result I am now officially up into the lead as a result of me being on the more durable tyres. And the NSX gives me a nudge as we head through the hairpin, but fortunately, I can now say I've managed to slot myself into the lead, and hopefully from this point onwards I will manage to stay there for the remaining 7 laps in this race. As which I should have probably brought some water with me before I started recording, because I'm already starting to dehydrate. Alright, so coming towards the conclusion of the 8th lap here at Gran Valley, I now officially lead the first round of the Professional All Japan GT Championship by a narrow margin over the first of the 2 Hondas. The second of the 2 Hondas is currently running in 3rd, followed by the Toyota Supra, who is running in 4th. Then it is the Pennzoil Skyline running in 5th, and at the back, after 8 laps, is officially the Loctite XL GTR. So, 8 laps are now on the board. We still have another 7 laps to go, as of which anything can still happen in this race, but fortunately I can now say, of course, that as a result of me being on the most durable tyres, I can pretty much say the race win is now mine, because I now lead this thing by 2.5 seconds, and I would imagine it's only a matter of time before his AI come in to make their pit stops. And it certainly won't change the complexion of my race, because I would imagine by the time these AI have pitted, that will basically just put me way the fuck out in front of everyone else. And shifting up into 5th gear so that I don't slide through the corner this time, and I think I may have benefited from that, and yes I have, as I now set a new PB by 0.2 of a second, and I also set a new best lap time as a result. And, oh shit, I have no idea how I did not slide the car there. Oh fuck, I cut the hairpin. I can assure you that was not intentional, that was just me making a mistake, because obviously this is a rear-wheel drive car, and as I would have expected from rear-wheel drive cars, they tend to oversteer. And I mean oversteer a lot. And the gap is now pretty much 4 seconds to the NSX, so as long as I don't bottle it from here, I would say victory is more or less going to be mine, as we now have almost 10 laps on the board. Why did I not short shift? Oh fuck me. I almost went onto pit road there, but somehow I managed to avoid hitting the pit lane. I have no idea how I was able to avoid that, but I really had to slam on the brakes in order to prevent that from happening, and that is really closed that margin down. But and officially the first of the competitors has now come into the pits to change tyres after only 10 laps. Even though I would imagine that's probably not going to work, because I don't think an undercut is going to pay too much dividends at a circuit like Gran Valley because of how big it is. The margin is now starting to increase once again, and oh fuck me! I am not concentrating. Okay, can I just concentrate on the race this time and not focus on what these fucking AI are doing? Can I just please focus on the race now? Because that would be the appropriate thing to do. even though I probably won't, because I'm leading this thing and continuing to make sleazy mistakes. So keeping it in third gear so I don't get too much oversteer. Doesn't look as though everyone else up to this point in the race has pitted, as of which I do now lead this thing after 11 laps, and I'm pretty confident that as long as I don't bottle it, in saying that I probably will manage to win this race with relative ease. But again, don't be feeling too disconsolate if I win at the tracks where I dominate, because I'm pretty sure this championship will have circuits where the AI are more favourable in terms of overall track pace than I am, but fortunately, since we started this championship at Gran Valley, officially, I have managed to get the early advantage. We are nearly 12 laps into this thing, and I'm pretty confident, to say the least, that by the time everyone else has made their pit stops, this race will more or less be won. Having to short shift into 5th gear so I don't fuck up the corner entry, and I set another low 149, and the Honda Raybrig NSX does now come to the pits, as does the Arta NSX after 12 laps of driving, and the Supra also pits in after 12 laps, so ultimately that is now going to hand the race win over to me by default. And officially, the Loctite Zexel GTR now takes the lead momentarily, but I'm pretty sure that he too has to pit. It is only a matter of time before the results have officially been finalised. As of which I can now say I'm leading this race by a long distance. And it looks as though the overcut here at Gran Valley clearly proving to be more beneficial than the undercut, which I'm suspecting is what the Pennzoil Skyline attempted to do, but fortunately for the others he was not successful. And I now pretty much lead this thing by half a minute as a result of pit stops. Okay, well, that could have gone worse if I wasn't paying attention. A little bit late there on the brakes, but fortunately I did manage to correct the slide, and officially the Loctite Zexel GTR does now come into the pits after 13 laps of driving on his first stint, which does now allow the two Hondas to take second and third places respectively, and it leaves me pretty much out in the lead by a long shot, because ultimately the overcut is clearly more beneficial than the undercut, and as of which the Pennzoil Nismo GTR has officially paid the price for attempting the undercut, because he is still in 6th position. So 14 laps are nearly complete. I can officially say the super slick tyre strategy is once again paying dividends over the hard tyre strategy, and shifting up into 5th gear so I can get through the corner. And officially we now start the final lap here at Gran Valley, and heading through the hairpin once again now for the final time here at Gran Valley. The completion of race number 1, and where it pretty much looks like for the races where I will have the advantage, I will basically dominate, and for the races where the AI will dominate, I am pretty certain they will probably thrash me in terms of overall pace and speed. So I think it's pretty much suffice to say, up to this point in the race, I have got virtually no chance of losing if I can keep it clean, and I'm hopeful to say at the very least in empathising that I will manage to keep it clean as we now head through the 4th tunnel and the chicane. And 33.5 seconds is now the margin to the Honda Raybrig NSX. The Arta NSX is running in 3rd, followed by the Denso Sard Supra. Then at the back we have the 2 GTRs, and there we go. And it is victory in race number 1 after driving 72 kilometers. Let's now wait for everyone else to get to the finish. Alright, so it didn't take too long for everybody to make it up to the finish. So, won by 32.8 seconds in the end over the Honda Raybrig NSX. The Arta NSX finished in 3rd. Then it was my fellow Supra, the Denso Sard Supra, finishing in 4th, followed by the Loctite Zexer GTR in 5th. The last of the competitors to pit, or the last of the AI to pit, I should say. And at the back it was the Pennzoil Nismo GTR. So, started this championship off in the best way possible by winning the first race. And 30 grand to compensate, which is even better. And officially... oh, that's not where I needed to go. I'm going to save this replay. Just so I can get the first part out of my fucking head. Anyways, second race of the professional JGTC, and where officially we are driving 20 laps around Apricot Hill. So most of these races are 15 laps long, but certain ones are 20 laps long. Might as well point that out. Although, I'm not going to change anything because I think I'm more or less going to win the race. Judging by what I can see here. already. I am down the inside of the Loctite XL GTR, already looking to make a manoeuvre for 5th position, and I'm slowly moving up as my fellow Supra now takes the lead in this race after exiting the S-curves. Now, trying to see if I can look for a manoeuvre on the Honda Arta NSX, as which I do so very accurately, and I now take 2nd position in this race, even though the NSX is trying to fight back. He brakes early, I brake late, I managed to get the jump on him round the outside and accidentally cut the second part of the chicane there because I wasn't paying attention. And officially, I'm now up into 2nd position after 1 lap. Oh fuck. And the gap is now pretty much 2.9 seconds. And I think my microphone is still running. I will have to check the video footage afterwards to see if it's running, but obviously I'm hopeful in saying that it is running, and officially I'm now... Oh damn it, I cut the chicane again. And officially I'm now running in 2nd position, and ultimately 2 laps are now complete. The Supra is slowly extending his lead, but I'm pretty sure that because he will have to pit before the end of this race, most definitely I would think, this is probably going to be where tyre longevity will be the beneficial factor, and hopefully tyre wear will be not quite as hard wearing here at Apricot Hill as it was at Gran Valley, because my left side tyres were close to being shredded at the end of that run, if I'm being completely honest. As of which, Gran Valley does have a history of tearing up the tyres when it comes to long racing, when it comes to the long races, especially if you are referring of course to something such as an endurance race. The gap has now built itself up to 5.5 seconds, but I'm not going to be feeling too concerned up to this point, because pit stops are guaranteed to happen before this race is over, as of which the race is even longer than it was at Gran Valley, because we are running 20 laps around Apricot Hill than we were in comparison to the 15 laps that we ran at Gran Valley. Even though the reason for that is because, well, Apricot Hill is a shorter circuit, and it's also an easier circuit to learn, in my honest opinion, if you're really wanting to get the gist of how exactly you can hone your driving skills to perfection if you have any in the GT series. And so we are now up to the end of lap 4. The gap is slowly increasing down the straight, but again, I'm managing to get a stronger exit off the first corner than the Supra is. I'm pretty certain, to say the least, that I will eventually manage to close at that interval and take the lead, as of which that's precisely what did happen at Gran Valley, because my tyres were more durable than the AI's, and that was ultimately what allowed me, of course, to take the lead. So, 5 laps are nearly complete in this race, and we should be a quarter of the way there. I'm able to close up on the Supra through the corners, as I have discovered. And getting a little bit loose there as I touch the outside grass, but again, it doesn't matter because I still set a new PB by just about a second. Running in second at the moment, but I'm pretty confident, to say the least, that by the time the tyres do start to wear off, that is officially when I will eventually manage to take the lead. Because even though the interval is increasing down the straights, the interval is also decreasing through the corners. And that is precisely where I can see I have the advantageous line. So the AI proving, of course, to be stronger down the straights, but again, I am proving to ultimately be stronger through the corners, and that is precisely what is managing to officially keep me alive up to this point. Set a UPB in the process of a 1 minute 17.75 in comparison to doing a 1 minute 17.993 on the previous lap. So a quarter of a second faster on this lap, and the interval is now 3.6 seconds, so I'm definitely closing in through the corners now. The tyres look as though they are starting to wear off on the Supra. It does not look as though he will hold on to the lead for much longer. As of which the super slick rubber is once again becoming a factor in this race, like it was the previous race, and ultimately we are now 7 laps down in this race, still 13 remain. Clearly proving, of course, to be much quicker through the corners than his AI up to this point in the race, as of which the interval is now down to 3 seconds. After pretty much 7.5 laps. As we now head down the back stretch into the hairpin once again. don't really need to push too hard on the car at the present time. Almost oversure I cut the corner there, but looked as though I just got away with that one without exceeding the track limits. And officially, I now set another new best lap time by a quarter of a second. Pretty much. So, lap 9 here at ToyotaCastrolTom'sSupra. It looks as though this will probably be where, on the next lap, I will more or less certainly take the lead. If I'm wanting to do this patiently, then obviously the next lap will probably be where I make my manoeuvre, but it could very well happen into the hairpin turn, although it doesn't look as though on this lap I'm close enough to make a manoeuvre, so I'm just gonna seize fire on this lap and then go for a manoeuvre on the next lap when I will really manage to find the bullet hole that will officially allow me to take the lead in this race, as well as pretty much hold on to it for the rest of the distance. So, lap 10, and this is the money lap, because NASCAR reference, whoever leads at the halfway point gets the money, even though unfortunately that's not the thing in this game, but you know, whatever, it's just a NASCAR reference of something they used to use. Whoever the leader was at the halfway point, and he runs wide. I go round the outside. He tries to shut the door on me, but I'm already on the outside line. I'm managing to persevere through the hard defences of my fellow Supra, and at the end of 10 laps, I now officially take the lead. The Supra does slap down the inside very briefly. I'm keeping it in 4th gear this time so I don't slide the car around, and I threaded through that chicane perfectly. And I now lead at the halfway point. And once again, the Denso Sard Supra tries to slot down the inside. I am now pretty much half a second clear of the Denso Sard Supra up to this point, as which at the halfway lap I ultimately led this race. I am getting distracted again. And pace is starting to drop off just a little bit, but it doesn't matter because I'm pretty confident in saying these tyres will manage to go the distance, and I'm also pretty much confident enough to say that I will definitely manage to win at least 2 out of the first 3 races, because the race following this one will probably be test course, and that of course is a circuit where I will need to be prepared. Although, since it is because I'm not really anticipating anything astonishing to occur at test course, I am pretty certain to say at the very least that I will at least manage to give it a go with a minimum downforce setup like I did for the GT All-Stars with Zonda, and then hopefully that will manage to help me out by finishing not last, even though that is precisely the position I expect myself to finish in. So 12 laps are now on the board. We still have 8 laps to go, but officially I am now confident enough to say that I am now managing to thoroughly extend my lead here at Apricot Hill under similar circumstances to how I pretty much managed to win at Grand Valley previously. So it looks as though the zero tuning tactic up to this point has worked wonders. The only reason why I've won those 2 races, why I've won, or I'm going to win these first 2 races up to this point, is ultimately because I have the most durable tyres of the entire pack. So 13 laps are now done, and we still have another 7 laps to go before this race is decided, as of which I'm certain this AI will inevitably pit before the end of this race, and that will ultimately allow me to officially persevere with the race lead and give myself a very much counter-intuitive lead over these AI. At the end of this race, the positions stay where they are now, and I would think if the Raybrig NSX is running second in this race, I'm pretty certain, to say the least, that if the NSX is running third in this race, I'm pretty certain that he will manage to probably hold on to his second position by a single point over the Supra. So once again, the undercut strategy is not paying dividends, and no one is attempting an overcut. So everyone pits after 14 laps, and it looks as though that is going to allow me to extend my lead even further. So 14 laps are now on the scoreboard, and it looks as though I am undeniably going to be probable race winner before this race is out. So 15 laps are now complete here at Apricot Hill. Check and see if I my microphone is still running, and if my microphone is not switched on up to this point, then I will be upset. I cannot see anything at the moment to determine if my microphone is switched on or not. I cannot determine anything until I manage to make a final decision. So, up to this point in the race, all I can really say is, well, I am pretty much shredding myself away from the rest of the field, because I am pretty much giving myself a shitload of an advantage up to this point. And even though my lap times are starting to drop off just a wee bit, I'm still pretty certain to say the very least in pretty much aforementioning. Up to this point, I am probably going to win the first 2 races. Of this championship. And if my microphone is not running at the end of this race, I am going to be upset. So 2 laps left here at Hill. I do not know if my microphone is on or not, and if it isn't, then I will be pissed off. Heading up to the end of the 19th lap here at Hill. And we are starting the final lap of race 2.
2
so to this point in the championship, I can officially say that I am probably going to have at least a 10-point advantage heading into race number 3. Dependent on knowing, of course, if I've done everything properly, of course, and my microphone is not muted. Even though it probably is. Because, well, I'm an idiot. To the front stretch we go, and it is victory to the ToyotaCastrolTom'sSupra for 2 races in a row. Let's now wait for everyone else to cross the finish line. Alright, everyone has finished, and if you're wanting the final margins for this race, well, I won by 28 seconds in the end over the Supra. Then it was the 2 NSXs in 3rd and 4th, followed by the Loctite's XL GTR, and once again at the back, as a result of him undercutting the rest of the field, it was the Turismo GTR. So I had to check and see if my microphone was running, because I wasn't sure on knowing if it was switched on or not. But officially, I have won the first 2 races. And we can now move onwards to race number 3. Oh, correction, I won by 27.5 seconds in the end of that race. But anyways, those are your finishing margins, and unfortunately with my capture card I usually have to wait a couple of seconds before it fully loads, and for race number 3 we are going to the shitty oval once again. Which means, of course, that I am going to have to suit up. So, going to put on stage 1 turbo, because there's no point in risking it. And going to go minimum downforce. Yep, both front and rear wing is at minimum downforce, and also going to increase the speed by a bit, so I can look more competitive, and hopefully we will have a shot at winning this, because I'm using the minimum downforce setup, which ironically enough has actually been very helpful for this course. Anyways, let's do race number 3. We are going to test a course where I know for sure that after this race the oil light is going to be red. Officially, it does not look as though it is going to be beneficial enough for me to officially mount a challenge on these AI, unfortunately. But at the very least I can say that I'm trying, since I've gone for minimum downforce. So, I did of course put on the stage 1 turbo for this race, because I had a feeling I was not going to be quite as competitive for this race as I had been in the first 2 races. And well, it doesn't look like I'm losing too much speed, because I went for the minimum downforce setup up to this point. And officially, it doesn't look as though I'm going to fall too far back to the leaders, considering I do have a reasonable amount of speed myself. And I do apologise if my water bottle was rubbing the microphone there. And I might be able to make an overtake possibly in this race, but I do apologise if my water bottle was rubbing the microphone. I was, of course, needing a drink, and it looks as though the two Nissans and the Toyota are pretty much going to be engaged in their own fight for what will presumably be the race victory here at Test Course. Although, one thing I can say at the very least is that the minimum downforce setup is definitely being helpful, as which I am now within the draft of the first of the two Hondas, the Honda Roadwig NSX, who is second in the championship going into this race. Looks as though he will probably drop down to third if he stays in the 6th position, as of which the minimum downforce setup is proving, of course, to have huge benefits for this race, as of which I am, of course, going into this race double the points of the AI, even though I'm pretty sure that by the time this race is done, that margin will pretty much be eradicated, exiting race 3, because ultimately I know for sure that my car is not going to be competitive enough to win this race, I don't think. Unless these AI make a pit stop, which has happened before, but again, I'm pretty certain, to say the least, in sympathising that there is an unlikely chance of me making it a hat-trick of wins. As which, I have won the first 2 races up to this point, and even though I am running up in the 4th position as a result of me putting on the Stage 1 turbo with an increase in speed as well as a decrease in downforce, ultimately I can pretty much certify that a victory up to this point is anything but possible. Because his AI are once again extending their margins, and I would imagine from here it's probably going to be a pretty boring race, in my honest opinion, unless there's AI pit. Because officially, the AI do seem to have the benefits of running at Test Course compared to me, and I'm pretty certain, to say the least, in being perfectly clear on knowing that my chances of winning this race are anything but possible. Because this is purely a place of speed, and it does not look like I'm going to have enough speed to contest for the lead, unfortunately. So, unless there's AI pit before the end of this race, which could happen, I am pretty certain, to say the least, in making a perfectly clear vertification and very much being itemised, with finishing 4th in this race probably, as of which these 3 leaders are very much battling for the lead at the present time. As of which my lap times at the moment are only just sub 2 minute times, and the gaps between myself and the leaders are slowly increasing, as of which the Supra does currently hold the lead over the Pennzoil Skyline, then it's the Zexel Skyline in 3rd, I'm running in 4th, ahead of the Honda Arta NSX, who sits in 5th position at the present time, and at the back it is the Roadwig NSX. So So 3 laps are in the books, and I'm pretty sure this will probably be the dullest race of them all by some margin because of how boring this track is, and also by the fact I'm saying that overall personally I think this track sucks. And 3 seconds is now the interval to the Supra, so up to this point I've got virtually no chance of winning, if you want my honest opinion. And basically what it is I'm trying to do is have a drink about as much as I'm trying to drive at the moment. At least having a drink of water in order for me to keep this constant commentary going. Well, probably terrible commentary, but still commentary in a way, because, well, it's what I do. I do it very insufficiently, but yeah, it's what I do. And, well, the top 3 are basically trading positions at the present time, as of which there really is no clear-cut winner, so that must be quite a battle going on up front, is what he thinks. Even though I did of course put on the stage 1 turbo so that I wouldn't be lagging too much power heading into test course, because I knew test course for me was going to be a bad race regardless of what happened next, and also I was pretty sure that regardless of whatever else was going to happen before test course, I would probably have the early advantage. And oddly enough, I am doing much better in this race than I thought I was going to do, because I thought for sure I was going to be on the back foot, but apparently as a result of me putting on the stage 1 turbo, increasing the top speed and also going for minimum downforce on this race car, I'm actually doing a lot better than I thought I was going to do. As of which, this car at the moment is actually handling beautifully, even though I'm not battling for the lead. I'm still evidently surpassing my expectations against all the odds. And so, I think it's fair to say my lap times at the moment are stabilised, because I'm more or less setting one low 158s at the present time, but I can at least clarify that since test course is notably one of the earliest races in this championship, obviously this is one problem I do not have to tackle. Later on in the championship, because if I get this over with early now, then it means of course that I do not have to tackle it again for the rest of the championship overall. So, 4.2 seconds is now the margin, as of which it is now the Supra that takes home the second position once again over the 2 Skylines. Meanwhile, I'm running in 4th, and the only 2 drivers I'm officially in front of, and I need to get off the wall because I'm not concentrating, and the only 2 drivers, like I was saying, that I am ahead of at the present time are basically just the 2 Hondas. truth is with me, I really don't give a fuck about what the results turn out to be, as long as I eventually manage to get this fucking shitty oval over with. Just having a sip of water to put myself running up to this point. I know I should probably move my microphone before I have these sips of water, but the truth is, I really cannot divert my concentration from the track too often, because obviously concentration is pretty much paramount when you're racing a test course, regardless of how shitty the experience might be in terms of just purely flat out racing a test course. The truth is, it's the only way you can truly drive this circuit, and that is precisely what in some cases I have got to fucking do, unfortunately. So, coming up to the end of 7 laps, and then at the end of lap 8 we will pretty much be halfway through this race. And it appears as though whatever the fuck is going on with the top 3 right now, positions are anything but stabilised. And so lap times starting to fall off just a little bit. Unfortunately, it really doesn't matter too much, because I didn't think I was going to win at test course anyway, unless these AI pits, as of which that will basically just be me winning at the course I hit the most by default. But again, I've pretty much made it clear in saying that I will definitely not win here at test course unless these AI pits, which could happen. It has happened before, and there is a distinct possibility at the very least to say that it could happen again, but even if I do manage to take the lead, I doubt I'm going to hold on to it very long, because both the Supra and the two Nissans have proven, of course, to be quicker than me on pure pace pretty much all race long, so there really is no point in fighting them too much for the race win, because I know for sure they are going to probably thrash me in terms of overall speed. And since tyre wear is not proving, of course, to be as much of an issue for these AI as it has been at the 2 previous circuits, this is probably where I will start to counteract my weaknesses. Although the truth is, it doesn't matter too much, because I knew test course was going to be one of my less beneficial circuits in terms of raw pace, so it really doesn't matter too much what does happen up to this point, considering I will still have the points lead regardless of what happens, even if I finish in last, which probably won't happen because I'm running 4th, but ultimately I'm pretty sure, to say the least, in empathising that I probably will just hold on to 4th position for pretty much the rest of this race. there is quite a titanic struggle going on for the leading position at the moment. Managing to avoid touching my microphone as I take a sip of water this time. So there must be quite a struggle going on there for the race lead up to this point, as of which anything could still happen up to this point, and as Murray Walker would always say, and it usually does, but again, in terms of raw speed, I'm pretty sure that I am not going to win this race, but if circumstances play into my hands, then hopefully that will be where I manage to take the lead. Although I'm very much doubtful in saying that is what will happen, because tyre durability around the test course is proving, of course, to be much more beneficial to these to the AI's advantage. Because it is basically just a course built for raw speed, and up to this point I'm doubtless in saying that 4th position realistically was the best I could have hoped for. But it's fine, because we only have another 5 laps left. Following this, and then, once we have done that, we can officially get back to real racing, and where hopefully I can manage to get my 3rd win in 4 races, like I did of course in the Amateur GT All-Stars, where I won 7 out of 10 races driving my DTM Astra. Although I'm not scrubbing off too much speed at the moment, as of which the needle is more or less just staying in position as I go into the corners. Lap times are starting to drop off a little bit, but again, it really doesn't matter because tyre wear is fine. I am more than happy to hold on to the 4th position up to this point. This is more or less what my race is going to look like, because as I did mention before, there are certain circuits where I will be stronger than the AI, and certain circuits where this AI will be stronger than me. And I would imagine by the time we get down to the World Championship, that will probably be no different, is what he thinks. But again, because this is such a fucking long course, I really don't have any other choice but to basically give up the fight and just focus on holding on to the 4th position, which realistically is the best position I can hope for up to this point in this race. That's a wall. And the one thing that these bankings remind me of, like I said before, they very much remind me of the fucking Monza bankings, because evidently the Monza bankings basically have one piece of guardrail on the outside, or used to have one piece of anchor or guardrail on the outside of the corner, and basically, if you got any one of those bankings wrong, you were basically off the track and into oblivion. Although, I am fortunate to say that they have not officially used those bankings at Monza since the early 60s, because obviously due to safety concerns they notably removed those bankings from the Monza road course, as of which you have a series of banked corners that are combined with a road course of basically flat out streets where you only really have pretty much one or two braking zones. That was basically all you really had to contend with if you were racing at Monza. Pre-1972, when they did officially add more corners into the layout. Because Monza was basically just flat out driving for pretty much 95% of the lap, and oddly enough in some cases, it's still pretty much more than 90% of the lap when you're driving flat out at Monza only. Even though this course itself is very much reminiscent of the Talladega Superspeedway in terms of its overall length, because you're basically just going flat out 100% of the lap, 100% of the time, and basically just waiting to see how long it is before someone makes a mistake and suddenly crashes into you. Although, fortunately, since we are not racing on stricter plates like they do in NASCAR, fortunately, pack racing is one thing we do not have to worry about, even though that's essentially what's happening up front. Up to this point, of course, the battle for the race win is anything but decided. And all I can really say is, well, I'm not too far behind that battle, but obviously my chances of winning up to this point, unless there's AI pit, which I'm doubtless in saying they probably won't, judging by the tyre durability here at Test Course, I am pretty certain that 4th position is probably the best position I can really hope for. But it's fine, because we still have just 2 laps left to go in this race following this lap, and then excuse me. And then by the time we have finished the final lap, we do not have to come back here for the rest of the championship, fortunately. And my engine is so close to failing right now. Or at least in real life, because of how poor reliability is in this game in terms of oil changing, durability for long races, obviously. And I just hit the outside wall. Anyways, so to those of you who are, of course, familiar with this game, after driving like 300 kilometers in a race car, or basically 186 miles if you are playing the NTSC version of this game, you will obviously know that after either of those distances, the oil light changes red, but obviously it does not cause any issues because the the car is still drivable, and since mechanical failures are not a thing in this game, obviously, you can basically just continue onwards, pretty much well past hitting the red oil light, which I am pretty sure is what will happen by the time this race is over, or at least by the time we start the final lap, because, well, reliability in terms of oil changes is not very good in this game, although it doesn't matter too much as it just turns red there after like probably 185 miles, methinks. But officially, it is almost over. We are now starting the 15th and final lap here at Test Course, finally. And where it has taken me just under 28 minutes to set 14 laps in this fucking race. Although by the time I'm done with this circuit, we will return to real racing. Because by God, I hate this circuit. And I am being genuinely and completely honest. I really do 100% undeniably object to this circuit existing. I absolutely hate it. And the battle for the race win has still not been decided amongst the top 3 runners, although it's not really too much of a shame to say that I won't be one of those competitors for the race win, because I have pretty much given up the fight to the race leaders. They are clearly faster than me, even though all 4 of us are proving to be faster than the Hondas, who are still running in 5th and 6th and still engaged in a rear battle. So there's only really 2 on-track battles happening here at Test Course, and this does prove, of course, one of the flaws of the earlier games, because there are only 6 opponents in each of these races. Anyways, coming across the line now, and it is finally over. After 29 minutes and 47 fucking seconds, this race is finally over. And it was the Supra that won the battle in the end, over the 2 Skylines. And I'm going to keep this on tape because the 2 NSXs are now approaching the finish line, and finally everyone has finished. So the Raybrig NSX did beat the Arta NSX in the end of that battle. The Denso Sard Supra beat the 2 Nissans, as I myself eventually wound up in 4th position, which oddly enough is much better than I can predict for coming out of this race. And so the gap has now pretty much eradicated itself from 11 points, 11 points to 4 points now, and finishing 4th, I also get a keychain, and officially the overall margin now is down to just 4 points. So I lost 7 points in that 3rd race, although it really doesn't matter too much because, well, that was Test Course, and I think this is probably where things are now going to get even worse. But again, I'm going to keep this on, even though I will need to divert back to the downforce setup I originally had. Well, Yeah, whatever, that should do it. Just because I want to give my own setups. And just gonna do that as well. And I think I'll leave the turbo on as well, because I'm pretty sure I'll probably lose the lead after this race, since we are at Route 11, but anyways, let's get to it. 15 laps of Special Stage Route 11 for the final race of Part 1 in this championship, as of which this is, once again, a 3-part championship. And fortunately, we can now return, of course, to proper racing. In comparison to the previous races where we did not. It's on to proper racing, and I should have probably removed the turbo, but again, I opted not to. Had the fear of knowing this AI would probably be more superior than me, and I ultimately just decided I'd give myself a little bit of a performance boost, just in case. As of which, I have now lost some of the horsepower I had before Task Course because, well, obviously, Task Course is just a shitty oval, and the Supra is trying to make a bid for first place, as of which I've now been shuffled to the back of the field once again. The Roybrig NSX has also now been dumped to the back of the pack behind the two Nissans. I'm trying to look for an opening on these guys, as of which the NSX opens up to the Pennzoil Skyline, and ultimately I'm trying to slot myself up into third position, and fortunately that is exactly what I managed to achieve. Whoa! Excuse me? Whoa, fucking hell. Can you two just fuck off? That was completely unnecessary. It was almost like one of them fucking brake tested me going into that corner. But once again, the Pennzoil Skyline is now at the rear of the field once again. I am currently running in 4th position. I have now been dropped down to 5th, and at the moment I am driving terribly. Considering I knew very well that Route 11 was going to be... Can you just fuck off? You do not have to keep punting me. Please no punterino, okay? Because you're literally trying to piss me off. And that was completely my mistake. Ugh. Can I please stop making the mistakes these AI are making? That would be nice. Although it probably doesn't help too much on how I'm running with additional downforce on the rear. But again, it doesn't matter too much because hopefully by the time we start Part 2 I will manage to hopefully get myself up into a reasonable enough position to hopefully win race number 3. But again, since we are at Route 11 for race 4, I'm pretty certain this will probably not be one of my more beneficial circuits, as of which I did of course decide to leave the turbo on for this race, considering I knew the Supra was probably going to obliterate me going into this race. and ultimately, as a result, he would probably take the lead in the process. If I finish if I finish third or lower in this race, then I'm pretty certain that is where I will probably fall to the back of the pack. Although it won't bother me too much, although it won't fluster me too much, because I knew very well this was going to be another one of those circuits where the AI would be stronger than me. And obviously, up to this point, I have won the first 2 races, but it looks as though at the end of part 1 in this championship, it looks as though the Supra could possibly take the lead away from me if he leads this race. Although, by default of me winning the first 2 races, and if I manage to finish this race in second or higher, then ultimately that is exactly what will probably put me up to the race lead. And the NSX is bump drafting the Loctite Zaxel GTR, and I completely missed my braking points there as I dragged on the wall. But ultimately, it has at least managed to separate me from the skyline very briefly, and I'm now trying to see if I can close up on my fellow Toyota Supra for the race lead. And the GTR at the moment is just being a real arsehole. And we now have a 2-way battle for the lead, although I do not want to slot myself into this battle too soon, because anything can still happen between these 2 leaders. And it looks as though if I do finish this race in 3rd position, excuse me, which is very well the position that I could finish this race in, pretty certain, to say the least, in pointing out that I could very well lose the lead in the championship if I finish in 3rd or lower, if I finish in 3rd or lower, methinks. Although I'll probably still be leading the championship if I finish this race in 2nd or higher, because ultimately that will give me a total of 29 points at the end of race 4, and it will probably still hand me the race lead by default, because I won the first 2 races before task course, even though my fellow Supra has more or less done the same thing, but he's had to wait until after Apricot Hill to officially repeat what I did at the start of the championship. And it looks as though the Loctite GTR is definitely becoming a contender for the race lead at the moment, because he is not letting the Supra waltz away with this one at the present time. Although, because I'm making less mistakes than this AI are at the present time, that is exactly what is helping me to stay in contention for the race lead. As of which, this AI are making a lot of mistakes at the moment. And because this AI are being over-aggressive, obviously, that is exactly where they are meeting their downfall. As of which, unexpectedly, after 5 laps, I now take the lead for the first time. Here at Route 11, which is one thing I did not expect to happen. Oh shit. And, yep. It looked as though the Loctite Skyline had really timed that one perfectly. And when the Supra was easily going to miss his braking point, and as a result of that, he now takes the lead in this race for the first time. Which does mean, of course, that if I can finish ahead of the Supra in this race, I would ultimately have a 6-point cushion heading into race number 5, in other words the halfway point, and at the moment the Supra is not letting me have that. And no, I'm not too surprised on how much aggression is being involved here at Route 11. I knew very well this AI were going to be touchy going into this race. I knew they were going to overdo their braking points, as of which I myself have done that a few times in the past, but nowhere near as many times as these AI have. And ultimately, I am now running in 2nd position once again, behind the Loctite's XL GTR, and this AI are just not letting me catch my fucking breath every time I enter these corners, because they are just literally overshooting to fucking murder me, is what it seems like. It just seems like they literally want to wreck me every single lap. And after a while, I will admit, it does start to get annoying, and there are times where you do feel like you can give and pay back. And oddly enough, in some cases, I do feel like that probably is something I should do. And I overshot the corner, and my attempts at payback were unsuccessful. Yeah, eat shit. Yep, there you go. Get fucked. And he's gonna overshoot the corner once again. Though he does manage to get past me very briefly. He passes me very briefly, but again, I pass him back because I knew very well it would not be long before the mistakes would be repeated, as of which I'm just constantly getting bullied at the moment. The bullying is basically a continual procession at the present time here at Route 11, just literally constantly being bullied by this AI, but somehow I've still managed to keep myself in the fight. For the race win, and it looks as though if I do manage to finish ahead of the Denso Supra, which could very well happen before this race is over, ultimately I am officially managing to pretty much hold on to my championship lead. And yes, I did decide to give my car more downforce so that I would not be slipping and sliding as much through the corners. And oddly enough, I can actually see the benefits. So, 7 laps are now complete here at Route 11. And the gap is now 1.9 seconds to the Loctite Zaxel GTR, who does now lead this thing. He's making the least mistakes of all of us up to this point in the race, as of which everyone else is continuing to overshoot the corners at the moment. Meanwhile, I am undershooting the corners. And even though I am closing in on the Loctite Zaxel GTR, at the end of 8 laps, I am pretty certain to say the least in saying that it doesn't look as though tyre wear will officially become too much of an issue up to this point, but ultimately, if I finish this race in second and the Supra the other Supra finishes this race in third, then ultimately that will allow me to officially retain my championship lead by a total of only 6 points. Heading into the halfway points of this championship. So I'm slowly closing in on the leading skyline, and again, dependent on knowing if I will or won't have the advantage of taking the lead through the corners remains to be seen, but at the very least I can now say I am no longer being bullied by the AI behind me. And as of which, up to this point, I'm going to try and race the leading GTR cleanly. I'm not going to fight him too aggressively. I'm going to race him as clean as I can, race him the way I should race him, and if I manage to force him into a mistake somehow without touching him, then hopefully that will be precisely where I manage to take control. And up to this point, I do now slot down the inside very briefly, but again, he will fight back inevitably, and he's coming down my inside. I'm leaving him all the racing room possible. There's no point in fighting him off. There's no point in cutting him off because he will clearly have the superior straight line speed. But again, there is still a possibility for me to say that a win is still on the cards. Here at Route 11, so I could still very well win this race if I can force the skyline into a mistake, as of which I do have the speed as well as the pace to do so. There is still a possibility of me saying that I could win this, but again, I want to achieve this one cleanly. I don't want to win by cheating or by playing dirty. I want to win this race cleanly regardless of all the chaos that I have had to endure. For the first half of this race. there is still a possibility for me to say that I can manage to hopefully win this race. Fuck! And now it doesn't look like a win is going to be possible. Although it doesn't matter too much because I didn't think Route 11 would be one of my beneficial circuits, whether it be the forward course or the reverse course, because I knew the AI overall on this circuit would be stronger than me. There really wouldn't have been too much of a point for me to fight for the lead for too long, because even though I'm proving to be much more superior through the corners, these AI are still able to have the overall raw speed through the corners. So I am able to have my benefits of this circuit through the turns, but ultimately these AI are still proving, of course, to be ultimately stronger than me down the straightaways, and that is exactly where I am lacking in comparison. So even though I am going to try and fight for the race lead, there really is no point in me fighting for the lead down the straights. Even if I am in the slipstream, I'm still going to lose the overall interval at the end of the straight, because that is literally how much stronger these AI are. Down the straights. So what I can hypothesize from this race as well, I am proving, of course, to be significantly strong through the corners, because I'm not making as many mistakes, but at the same time, the AI, as they have been all race long, are proving to be stronger down the straights. Here at Route 11, and that is exactly where lacking the speed. And even though I do manage to take the lead once again, I try to stay out of the way of these AI. I know that most of the time they will overshoot these corners, but somehow they will be able to make the passing manoeuvres work, as I now shift up into 4th gear, and even though it does look as though I'm pulling alongside the skyline down the straights, I'm still pretty certain, to say the least, in hypothesizing that I will not officially win this race until the skyline has pitted, and I still don't know for sure if he will or won't pit for tyres, but it does look as though he probably will be likely to do that. I got a stronger exit off the corner, and even if the skyline is running on worn tyres up to this point, he's still proving to be significantly quicker down the straights than I am, but again, I'm still proving to be the cheater through the corners, as like I essentially have my side of the raw pace through the corners, whilst his AI have their side of the raw pace. Down the straights. And I'm not going to fight him off too much up to this point. It looks as though he will pit for tyres, and indeed he does. And oh, okay, no he doesn't. He does not pit for tyres this lap. Thought for sure he was going to, but apparently not. Unless he pits in on the penultimate lap, and if he doesn't, then well, ultimately he will basically be trying to gamble in saying that he will manage to make up the rest of the distance. And oh, that was naughty there. That was fucking naughty right there. Although he has to pit in either this lap or the next lap, and if he does not come into the pits, then obviously it proves, of course, that he will, like me, be going the full distance on the tyres. Although I don't have to win this race in order to retain my points lead, because up to this point in the race, I would say, unless the Loctite ZXL GTR pits in on this lap, I would say there is an unlikelihood of me saying that I will win this race. And so I'm now less than a quarter of a second behind. It looks as though he is going to pit in this time, and indeed he does come into the pits after nearly going the entire race distance on those tyres. And as I now start the final lap here at Route 11, it officially looks as though that has handed me the race win by default. Although that could still change if I make a mistake, and I'm hopeful in saying that I do not make a major mistake up to this point, because I do now have pretty much a 20-second gap to the GTR up to this point in the race. The rest of the field by now has pretty much stabilised, and it looks as though I could very well be on my way to making this 3 wins in 4 races. Officially, as I was not expecting this to happen, I am ultimately going to win, ironically, 3 out of the first 4 races, and ultimately gather up an accumulated total of 33 points. So through the final corner we go. Ultimately, the final lap is also my best lap, because I was cleared of the AI. And so, let's now wait for everybody else to finish. Alright, everyone has managed to finish, and as a result of the Pennzoil Nismo GTR once again doing the undercut compared to these AI, ultimately he has once again finished in last. But there we go, it's official. I have won 3 out of the first 4 races by default of tyre strategy. And as of which, in spite of all the chaos that happened here at Route 11, I did not think up to this point I would ultimately win 3 out of the first 4 races. I have got to be honest, I did not think that was going to happen, realistically. But somehow, it has happened. And officially, just gonna check and see if I have a replay saved. Yes, I do. And let's now save this game. And so, that concludes part 1 of the Professional All Japan GT Championship. And where next time we shall be doing part 2. So with that, stay tuned for more of GT3.